Hello and welcome to this guitar lesson video. This video is going to be an introductory video to the concept of scales. A few things that we're going to cover in this video. We're going to cover the basic music theory behind the major scale. We're also going to cover the concept that links major scales to what we call the CAGED system. There's a previous video in this guitar lesson video playlist on the CAGED chords. Those major chords are going to have a correlation to the major scales. And in addition, we're also going to cover some basic techniques, things for your fretting hand, things for your picking hand. So hopefully you have your guitar with you. If you are following along exactly with what I am showing and demonstrating in this video, you will get the concept of scales much easier than if you do not have your guitar with you. So please grab your guitar and follow along with this lesson. So the first concept to understand here is the concept of the major scale. The major scale is built from a pattern of intervals. And an interval is the distance between two individual notes. So we have whole steps and we have half steps. These are the intervals that we build the major scale from. The first major scale that people will usually learn is the C major scale. Now we have a note C on the very first fret of the B string right here. And if we pluck that, that is the note C. After our root note of the scale, we have two whole steps. Then we have one half step. And then we have three more whole steps. And then a final half step. So the pattern goes like this. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And it sounds like this. This pattern will always give us the major scale, no matter what our root note is, and no matter what key we're playing in. Then we will also number the notes in the scale, and these are what we call scale degrees. So if we start on the very first note in the scale, and this is the C major scale again, if we start in the very first note in the scale, well obviously that's the first note or the first scale degree. We would just call it 1. And then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're back to 1 again. And eventually, over time, we will kind of get it ingrained in our mind that between 1 and 2 is a whole step, and between 2 and 3 is a whole step, and between 3 and 4 is a half step. We understand pairs of notes as the interval that they are. Scale degrees is not the only thing we use numbers for. We use numbers for many things. Intervals, chords, scale degrees, but also for our fingers. I have our first finger here, our second finger here, our third finger here, and our fourth finger here. So index is 1, middle is 2, ring is 3, pinky is 4, and then our thumb is just the thumb. It doesn't count and it doesn't have a number. One of the very basic techniques that we need our finger numbers for is for utilizing what's called the one finger per fret technique. Here's a close-up example of what one finger per fret technique looks like. As you can see, I've got a finger here on the first fret, my second finger here on the second fret, third finger, third fret, fourth finger, fourth fret. Another technique that goes right along with the one finger per fret technique is what we call shifting. Let's say I have a nice one finger per fret technique and I am in the first position. Now, what if, hypothetical scenario, but it's going to be a real scenario in just a few minutes. What if I have some notes on the 5th fret that I need to reach? Well, we use shifting. So shifting is when we take all 4 of our fingers and we move them all together. And I've maintained the one finger per fret technique, which you just saw a close-up of just a second ago. While we're on the topic of techniques that we need to use, we should also talk about the picking hand. You will need to spend some time with this if you are brand new, but you kind of have to have your eyes in two places at once. You're going to do a lot of this looking back and forward from your fretting hand over to your picking hand over here. So let's say I want to play the 2nd fret, my second finger, and on the E string right here. Well, I need to get this finger in the right spot right there. Then I need to also pluck that string with this pick here. So I need to look there at first to find where that hand goes. Then I need to look over here and make sure that I'm aiming and that I hit the low E string, which has that note that I'm trying to play. It's a very slow process at first, learning all of the scale shapes and everything, and you're doing a lot of that, looking back and forward and just going one note at a time, very, very slowly. Now, let's get introduced to our very first scale. It'll be the C major scale again, but we're going to play it a little bit differently than we did where we were playing it across this string in the horizontal direction. We're going to learn to play the C major scale in the vertical direction using these techniques that I just introduced you to. Hopefully you have watched the former video in this series about cowboy chords, open chords. We know we have a C major chord, and that's what it sounds like, and hopefully you know how to play that chord already. Now we have what's called boxes on the guitar neck. This idea of a box is including a chord shape like we just played and a major scale shape together in the same frets, on the same strings, using the same notes, sharing everything. So we have a chord and a scale, both which have their own unique shapes because chords and scales are different from each other, of course. But we have a chord and a scale that exist together in a confined box on the neck. And there are 5 of these boxes that exist. And I will show you all of these in just a minute. But the first one we're looking at is the C box, the box that contains both the C chord and the C scale. It's important to remember that chord shapes are named after the chord that the shape makes in the open position. Now, the scale shape that exists within the same box is going to share the same name as the chord. Hopefully that's obvious. So here is the C scale diagram, and you can see what that looks like. And also, I can highlight the notes of the C chord that exist within the box in that scale. So there, I just demonstrated very clearly the scale shape and the chord shape both together in the same box, in the same place. Let me do that again on a close-up. This is the essence of the CAGED system. Chords and scale shapes of the same name fit together in a box, and these boxes are movable. We can play in any key with or without a capo using these boxes. And again, this is just the essence of what makes the CAGED system. If you're interested in learning more about guitar, then that's what you need to be researching and learning more about, is the CAGED system. These chord notes, chord tones as they're called, are just a selection of notes on each of the strings within the scale shape. So we have these shared notes, and I mention that because of the root notes. The root notes are what we need to keep track of. Always be keeping track of where the root note is, what finger is playing that root note, what string is that root note on. I'm going to really just kind of blow through as fast as I can all of the different scale shapes in all of the different boxes that exist. I'll show them in the open position and in fretted position. So the only thing that changes between open position and fretted position, just like with your cowboy chords, the only thing that changes is your fingering. The shapes stay exactly the same. The patterns stay exactly the same. The major scale is exactly the same. The scale degrees are exactly the same. Everything is the same. The only thing that changes is the fingering from the open position to the fretted positions. The very first shape that we will look at is going to be the C shape once again. So we have our C chord in the open position. Now here is the diagram. You can see the C shape in the open position, and here's what it sounds like. And once again, here's the chord. Now, let's take that shape and move it up into the fretted position. And for this, my fingers are going to remain exactly where they are, one finger per fret starting on the first fret. Things change a little bit, of course. Now my fourth finger on the A string is where the root note is in the fretted position. And I can still play the C chord shape, but now we are of course in the key of D flat. So here is the fretted position of the C scale shape. Here we go. There we go. The C scale and chord shapes together in their box. The next box we're going to look at is, of course, the A box. CAGED, C-A, we're going to go in that order. So we cannot do this in the key of A major, as you will see. Hopefully you'll be able to see why we cannot play in the open position in the key of A major using the A scale shape. We're going to start here on the first fret in the key of B flat, and here is the open position in the key of B flat with the A major scale shape. So you can see we are utilizing all four of our fingers, and in just a second when we see the fretted position, we're going to see the very first instance of shifting, where we're going to have to shift our hand up by one fret, just like that. The root note is no longer underneath our first finger on the A string, is now under our second finger on the A string, and here is now the fretted position of the A scale shape, now in the key of B major. So here we go, and watch for the shift. Watch when that happens. It will happen when I move to the B string. Here we go. So you can see the shift happened, and you can see what happens right here. I've got now, my fingers are kind of scrunched together because I'm shifting, but as soon as I scrunch and I bring this finger up, then all of my fingers stretch back out into one finger per fret positioning. And then when I go back down, I scrunch and then stretch again back to one finger per fret position. That only happens over the course of one note, in between one note. G is the next shape. This is the next box that we will see. We have to be playing in the key of A flat. Now our root note is underneath our fourth finger on the E string. This shape also has some shifting going along, and you will see that there's actually two shifts that we have to perform. Of course, that shifting won't happen in the open position, but it will once we slide everything up and we shift to a purely fretted position. But for right now, we have an open string. In the fretted position, the G scale shape. This shape was a little bit tough for me to get at first. I don't have my students start with this one. I will always have my students start with either the C scale shape or the E scale shape because those ones don't have any shifting in them. But this is a little bit of a tricky shape, so practice at it, and eventually you'll get it just like I did. Next, we have the E scale shape in the open position. The root note on the E string on the first fret underneath my first finger in the open position. Now, here we go. This is, of course, in the key of F major. You can see your F major bar chord right there. Now, let's take it and slide it up into the fretted position. This will mean that the root note is underneath our second finger, still on the E string. We're now in the key of F sharp major. The last scale shape is, of course, the D scale shape that fits in a box with the D major chord shape. If we're going to play this in the open position, we have to again start with the root note on our first finger on the first fret of the D string. So we are playing in the key of E flat for this scale shape, and it goes something like this. The root note is going to be on the D string, but the finger we're going to use is now our second finger. Now we are in the key of E major, and we can see the shifting happening in this scale shape now. So here we go. Shift, 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 shift. There we go. We can see all the shifts, and you can see when they happen. It's kind of a little bit weird because we go 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We stop at the second note down there, which is a little bit weird, but you know, it's just how this shape works. One way that we can actually play that lowest root note without shifting out of position is by using a different technique and a different system called the 3-note per string system. This is a system that has only one rule, and the rule is that you have to play 3 notes on every string. So in the D scale shape, let's say let's do it in the key of F major because it'll be really easy to see. So again, the second finger root note on the D string, and our D major scale looks exactly the same as it just did, but when we descend, we have this kind of spreading out. You can see we're no longer in 1 finger per fret territory here. We are in 3-note per string territory. For worship music, all of the stuff that we can do with CAGED. It's enough, and you can spend the rest of your life getting better at CAGED system for sure. But if you're looking for something different, for more speed, for more of a different kind of music, then the 3-note per string scale method is going to be something that you will probably like a lot.